afternoon. Everybody will come back to their seats, please. We've got a few people still moving around. We're going to do a couple of more prizes. And the first one, again, we'll give people time to come in. Does everybody have a blue ticket? Did they get a ticket when they came in and registered? Okay. If you don't have a blue ticket, accost Hazel here.
Hi. Hi.
And she will get you a ticket.
Does anyone not have?
Yeah, they're coming to you. We have like 3 or 4.
Registrants, not visitors, right?
Correct. Attendees, sorry. Thank you for keeping me on track.
You're welcome. Oh, David's got them.
Okay, the first door prize we're doing is actually courtesy of A&W Supply. They had to leave early. They did their drawing and left it with me. And it is a $25 gift card to Cheesecake Factory. And the winner is Miss Carol Hayes.
I'm trying to improve my chances. I still lose.
Okay. Also, we have the sign-in sheets for the afternoon sessions on the front table. I had a couple of questions on boarding passes and passports. The passports, obviously, if you were able to get that completed today, awesome. If not, we have tomorrow as well. Boarding passes, NAPA could not be here today. They will be here tomorrow, so hang on to that unless you're not going to be here tomorrow, and then CBO will work that out. Okay, ready? The first door prize is courtesy of ETDA, and it is 100% pure Tennessee Mountain Honey, and it goes to number 75.
Something comes and goes.
It does.
See? It wasn't me.
Dun, dun, dun.
Told ya.
Batteries on that one.
Told you.
Okay. 7576. The last four numbers is
How
Matt.
did I get on?
Hang on to it. This year we are doing a little bit different. Hang on to your ticket because we may have another drawing that you need it for.
When you start calling them.
Then we have pineapple salsa. Number 7589. Oh, just
Oh,
not
look at
bad.
that. He owes me that with that jar, I'm sure I helped him out there.
You got something for me?
On your own.
Hey, where's the news?
Okay. It is my pleasure to introduce Brian Wilcox, who will be moderator for our next session. He served as purchasing manager for the city of Franklin since 2004, after serving in various capacities for other municipalities in Tennessee, Kansas, Illinois, and Missouri. So if you don't have your passport done, you just covered like 4 states right there. Brian has served on the NIGP Knowledge Management Committee and the NIGP Forum and Products Expo Committee, and he chaired the steering committee for the 2018 NIGP Forum Local Planning Committee. I think, are you recuperated?
Working on it.
He was born and raised in suburban Chicago and earned his bachelor's degree in economics from Vanderbilt and a master's degree in public administration from the University of Kansas. Brian and his wife Amy, who is from Chattanooga, met as college students, now live in Brentwood, and have 2 boys, both now adults, who live away from home, but they're 2 golden retrievers, also known as fur babies. That's my term, not his. Object to them using the term empty nester. Brian is active in his church, is a member of the Vanderbilt Community Course, and enjoys recreational bicycling. Welcome, Brian.
Is my lapel mic going? Do I need?
Did you turn it on?
Turn it on.
And how do I do that?
Complicated.
How is that?
Very
Awesome. Thank you. This is out of order, but I feel the need to thank every time I see them for their service to our 2 chapters, those that helped plan this conference. So Debbie and Karen, will you invite your respective committees to stand?
So
And
everyone
maybe
knows
just
that.
thank them again?
Up. Everyone up.
and special thanks to you for your leadership and service to our chapters. Well, I think this session is new for our conference. Someone correct me if I'm wrong about that. We have a roundtable that is a highlight for me of the conference. Traditionally, we'll have that also, but this session is a special roundtable discussion with our sponsors. And so I think it would be most appropriate for us, before we do anything else, to thank our sponsors. Will you join me? We appreciate your interest. I like to say at bid openings that the purchasing function works only if our agencies have suppliers and service providers that are interested in doing business with our agencies and helping us serve the public. And we appreciate your interest in working with us. So thank you for your sponsorship and for being here. The topics that have been submitted in advance are relatively few, and I'm frankly not sure that all three of the ones that are submitted in advance apply to this roundtable. We'll figure that out together. So that's a long way of saying, I hope you will raise your hand with topics that you would like to have us discuss. In the spirit of the session this morning about tactfulness, I want to apply something I learned, and that's how important it is to have an agenda and how important it is to let people know when we're going to stop. And so we are scheduled to stop at 2:45. Help me with that. And our agenda, I think, is to engage in dialogue with our sponsors and service providers and suppliers that are here. So am I on target? Is that the agenda, to have some dialogue? Okay, just wanted to make sure that we're all agreed on that. Then let's turn to the topics that were submitted in advance. And I may be the only one in the room that has these, right? Okay, so I'm going to read these aloud. We rehearsed, and I missed rehearsal, so that's why I'm having to make sure I get started the right way. The first question that was submitted in advance is, I think we touched on this morning, but check me on this. It's asking for an update on the legislation being pushed by central bidding. Is that the subject of the legislation about electronic bids being required? So we kind of covered that. Do any of our sponsors wish to engage in dialogue on that subject? Especially those of you that offer technology as a service to local procurement. Ion Wave, do you want to?
No, that's fine. That was actually our question.
Oh, okay.
We believe that you guys should have the right to choose what you guys want to do. You know what's best for your county, city, school district. So we've been, what was stated earlier about central bidding, they have come into Arkansas and kind of pushed legislation that way. And then same thing with Mississippi. So.
And central bidding, just for those of me that aren't aware, is the name of a software?
Yes.
Central bidding?
Yes.
Okay.
So they have a couple different procurement tools. So they've come in and kind of what they're doing here in Tennessee. I guess last year you guys were able to shut it down. Mississippi wasn't, and same thing with Arkansas. And both states were not very happy with what was being passed. So we just want to help you guys and kind of get an update on. But like you said, it was stated earlier what the update was.
And to summarize, in case you were distracted this morning, that update, I'm really not the right person to give that, but I'll do my best, is that it has been sent to a committee of TASER and is being studied right now, and a recommendation is forthcoming. But the person that wrote Libby McCroskey a summary or update didn't seem to think that there was any compelling, big hurry to make this happen, which is sort of good news, right? I mean, it's better that way than that there is compelling, but the lack of compelling isn't as good as there is a compelling feeling that we shouldn't go down that path.
Yeah.
I wish that was the message, speaking personally, but let's get some dialogue on the subject. Is anybody else wish to chime in? I know that Franklin, for an example, we ought to be doing electronic bidding and we're not. But I don't feel like I want the state law to tell me that I've got to hurry up and do that this year, next year. Yes.
Yeah, Tim Boyles with the city of Memphis. We have electronic bidding, but it's not required of the vendors to do it. They can either put their bid online or do a hard copy. So I guess my question is this new legislation, is it going to be where they're considering all vendors have to put it online?
No,
Okay.
it's that everyone has to provide it, whether centralized,
We just have to
decentralized, and it's
offer the
unfunded, yeah.
Okay.
And by the way, the guy that's brought this forward has a system now.
Well,
Just
right now,
saying.
state law says you cannot require it.
Well, he's
You can
working on
offer
this.
it, but you cannot require it.
Right, you
for
still
the-
have to allow people.
you have to allow
And it's
it.
not a requirement, but they're requiring that we have it available. That's the requirement, is that we have to do it. If you're decentralized, how the heck are you gonna do that? How many people are you gonna train to operate that? You know what I'm saying? And there's a cost. There's a cost to training, there's a cost to the software. There's a huge impact there. I also do online bidding, and I actually kind of cherry pick, and the ones that, and please don't take this wrong, anyone, but I try to
Debbie,
make
how
it,
about using the microphone?
if it's
If it's not a complicated bid, I'll put it online. If it's complicated and I feel like it's too easy for them to miss a form that I require and have to throw it out, I don't want to do that. So, only when I think it's, pretty simple and easy do I do my onlines. I prefer them, but if there's a lot of documentation and things that have to be signed, I just go the old fashioned way, so they have to really take a look at the papers.
Proposals would take only hard copies.
Right. You know why I do that? Because otherwise I gotta print out all those copies. I mean, I'm biased to this. My copier count went way up when I went online, so, yeah, if there's a lot of copies involved, I'd rather they had to print them than me, but just saying. But anyway, that's where it's at, and we really, I probably put in more time than a lot of the folks on the legislative on that issue than when we tried to get the bid limit raised the first time, 25,000. I think we were just kind of blown away with this one. It was just all of a sudden, it blew up on a weekend. Where's Lynn? Is she getting the shakes? She was the one that the senator was going to over this and wanted to know what we were thinking, and it really kind of unraveled politically. It was a real mess. But, we stood our ground and sent our opposition to everyone. So then fortunately, all those letters that were sent out, then Nathan contacted us, and thank goodness a lot of folks fed him more information. Penny, Terry, a lot of folks, I think Lynn, a lot of folks, communicated with him, let him know what our issues are. And he's thinking that they're true issues. So it's not just us. It may happen only because it's prevalent in other states. It would be a shame, I think, to force that upon people. It's not funded, but we gave them our say, and that's about all we can do. We can't afford a lobbyist. So anyway, that's where it's at.
There was something earlier about construction bids being required to be put in online. Or like,
I'm not aware of
With
that.
If it's TDOT requires that you do theirs on.
And don't use.
But that's the only one that I know of. I think TDOT requires that you submit your bill. Matter somebody,
We don't work with
Yeah.
that.
I think there's.
That's the only way you can get to an actual TDOT bid.
Yeah,
TDOT,
it's
right.
TDOT, yeah. Like our
But not us with TDOT, so we'll have to.
Right.
No, but you cannot, of course, get contracted.
So TDOT doesn't
Yeah, I
follow the state law that says you can't do it, they require.
Good question, Tim. Another question?
I did have one question.
Yes.
This bill or proposal that they're planning, is it for all government agencies, or is it for municipalities, or would it be for school
Microphone,
districts? Any other government agencies that do it, or is it specific towards a certain type? Does anyone know the answer to that?
No, it's across the board, but there are exemptions for smaller agencies. It depends on the size of your population. And do you have that legislation with you?
No. You mentioned 12,000, population of 12,000.
It was pretty
Yeah,
small.
it's pretty
It was
small.
Exemption, yeah.
Yeah, but there are a few exemptions, like if you don't have high-speed internet, then you're exempt. But I guess most of us, so what is that exactly? Does that mean fiber? So, yeah, there were some exemptions though to it.
They were very limited.
So my comment, and for those on the legislative committee, I know that a lot of us are hoping that this does not go through. But if it seems like it's gaining steam, maybe we should look at doing something like we did with the competitive bid level where you have to have a full-time purchasing agent,
Yes.
raise that population up significantly, and maybe put some other things in there that would help some of the smaller, especially cities, counties that, are one-man operations and things. Maybe we should look at having a backup plan if it does look like it's gaining steam.
That's a good idea. We can talk to Nathan about that. I talked to Nathan a couple months ago, I guess. Sorry, I wasn't here this morning, and I was trying to watch the feed, but people at work wanted me to do stuff. But I did talk to Nathan a few months ago, and his thing, he was kind of shocked at our pushback because he said, they were like, well, isn't this a good idea to do bids online? And I said, absolutely. We're not, we're not in the dark ages. We're willing to use technology. But I did explain to him how we felt it was an unfunded mandate. And one of the other concerns we really had was because we aren't doing online bidding yet. Long story. Anyway, we're getting there. Right, Pamela? But I did say to him, I said, there was a 6-month implementation in there. And I said, dude, that won't fly. Because I told him, I said, if this was effective July 1st, we don't even have an opportunity to ask for the money until the next spring. So that was one thing we did ask, was that it would be a much longer implementation time. We did ask that it be a recommendation from the state rather than you have to.
And not only funding, you've got to do the RFP, you've got to do
Right.
application, you've got to.
Right.
Very
Yeah.
I've got a question.
Yes.
Brian.
Yeah, hello. Thank you.
I'm curious if you feel like, we started our business because there was a consensus that paper registration forms and compliance for vendors reduced participation because it was difficult to keep up with the paperwork registrations. Do you feel like there is reduced participation in RFPs and quotes and whatnot, which we're still hearing, has someone come today, I'm not getting enough participation, how can I do this better? So do you feel like because of the onus of having to do paper, printing out 5 or 10 copies, which is a significant cost for small vendors, do you feel like not having an option of doing electronic bidding is actually creating a cost for you guys because you're not getting as much competition for your contracts?
Is another way to ask that question, the benefit of electronic bidding would be more competition?
Correct.
It's a great question.
I have to agree with Penny on some things. The mayor of Bartlett is on the study committee, and one of the representatives called me, and I had to answer a lot of his questions about this. I also talked to Collierville before I answered, and talked to some of the other entities that is close to Bartlett. But Penny, I did the exact same thing. Number one, you got to have at least a 2-year window for implementation. And I also questioned about the population cutoff. So the population say 20,000. I said, what about the ones that's got 25,000? They're going to be hurting for this because they're right on the borderline of what's being mandated and not. So he really took a lot of my answers and was very thorough in it. So we're hoping that it's not a mandate, but it's going to be voluntary. And I came from a big county that we had electronic bidding, and it was a good thing, but it took almost 2 years to get that software in place and to get it to going. And it did have a lot of vendors that could register and online, but the only way you could get the bid response is if you bid on that particular thing. It wasn't really a public opening. So there's still some glitches in the software there that needs to be fixed before it's mandated.
And I have a response. So I might not have that proposal come in electronically. Brian, hi, Brian. You know how long it has been.
The camera.
It's not, it is here, okay. So I would like to respond to that. I may not have it required to be online, but I always advertise it and send it through my electronic system. So I'm still using it, they're still being notified by it. I just, when it's big and complicated, I just have them submit it physically. So we're still using that system.
I've got a question for the vendors. We take ours on, or most, we're like the others, we don't do our RFPs, but we still have a lot of vendors that do not respond online. So why would you not respond online when the opportunity's there?
Do any of the vendors wish to answer that question?
You don't always, it's not every time that you have might not always have a product or the specification that you're requesting for.
Well, no, we get paper copies. So why, on just a normal bid, we still get paper copies of just a bid that all you have to do is go online and put your quote in, but a lot of our vendors still won't do it electronically. So it seems to me like there are more vendors that would rather do it paper than there are public. I mean, I think most of us would rather do it electronically if we could, but our vendors don't want to do it. We still probably we get 5 bids, 4 of them come in paper and 1 come in online.
Intimidation.
So that's how we do it with them. It's easier for me. I want to go see the customer. It's just easy for me. Yeah.
And you know it's there, and you know you didn't attach like a picture of it, you know, it was there, your document.
When we do one online, we need to take a hard one, so down.
It has happened.
So that sort of defeats the purpose.
I know, but.
It's nice if it's available though. I mean, if we have to be out of town and utilize it, so you don't have to have someone else take it for you, but for me, I'm much rather go with person.
Sounds to me like it's part of your relationship building strategy.
Sure.
Is that?
Yeah, I mean, for me, it is.
Interesting. That's why we're here.
I think if you're not going to show up.
That's why you're here.
Then.
Plus we're really fun.
It's a fun place to do business.
These folks at this table, by the way, are with Worldwide Equipment, right? Have I
Yes, sir.
spoken
Yes, sir.
correctly? Good. We
So,
appreciate you.
My question, my concern would be putting on my diversity business hat is if you do the online, then you've got all these small businesses and women, minority-owned, service-disabled-owned small businesses that I think you're also putting another restriction, another hardship on those companies to try to get them engaged, which is already difficult because of the nature of what they do, the nature of the business being small, one person payroll, all that goes with that. I think you're adding another layer, another thing that keep them from participating. Can I go now? One of the concerns that I had, and my mayor is on the TASER committee, and I spoke with Nathan on this topic, and if you research central bidding, in their terms, they have a right to look into the bid responses while they're in their care. So if that bid response goes through their software, they have access to all those responses. And then that information, they have a right to keep that information, which allows a database to be compiled and information to be collected for what you buy, how much you buy, and those kinds of things which can be sold to make money off of their electronic bidding process. That was my main complaint, was that if buying their software allows them to also create another business end of selling our data, which I don't think it's right for a company to collect our data, which is free and open public record, to be compiled and sold. So I have a problem with that. And as for to comment on Pamela's question, it does not require everyone to respond electronically. It gives you a right to respond electronically, but does not force you to use that. You can still submit and respond by paper, in person, through mail, without having to use the software. But my complaint is what can be done with our information. To me, it compromises the integrity of the bid process when a company can see all of the responses even before the bid is opened.
Any response to that?
I think we have another question.
Okay, new topic, new comment?
Actually, what I was gonna say, I think I'm gonna change it. I actually never thought of a couple of those aspects, and that has really opened my eyes to some serious aspects that I never took into consideration. I was gonna say, I work for a large school district in the state, and I did, when the request came out, to send emails to senators and things of that nature. So I did, to one from Chattanooga. I did it from a school point of view, and I did feel that it was, it basically would hurt the small business, the MWBs, the minority, and being a community school philosophy where we tie in the family, the employment, the everything that goes into the education of these children. We really welcome these businesses, and I realize, it's not required, but, so, as long as it stays that way, I guess it'd be fine. But I would not want to do anything that discourages them from, wanting to participate with Hamilton County. It's just a philosophy we have of encouraging that communication with the community and involvement.
Great.
Thank you. Good comments.
One of the issues we hear about why vendors don't want to put on bid online, it's just we have Oracle. It's not the easiest system to learn. And also, we have like City of Memphis, Shelby County Government, MOGW, the other towns, Bartlett, Germantown. There's too many systems to learn for a vendor to go on and put bids on. We're all using different systems. And we have so many bids going out that if a vendor waits till the last minute to call us, more than likely, we're not gonna be able to help.
Yeah.
Or bids are due at 12. We get bid, calls at 11:50, 11:55. I can't get my bid online. The response is almost, you're out of luck. We don't have time to do it in 5 minutes. So that's a big issue. It's just unless they're putting bids in regular with us, they're doing 1 or 2 bids a year, they just don't remember how to do it. That's just very hard copying.
While we're passing the mic, that comment causes me to be sympathetic all over again to the suppliers and service providers. After all, even if they do it on paper, they're still dealing with different forms for each of us and different procedures and different boilerplate instructions, and it must be a challenge to want to serve the local governments across the state. Next comment.
Hi, I'm talking from one of the sponsors. I'm with Omnia Partners. We're a purchasing cooperative. But before this, I worked for the state of Tennessee in their central procurement office, and we also have an Oracle system. It's called Edison, and I hear a lot of groans and noises. Yeah, there's some really strong opinions about Edison. I was there. But we also had the option of like putting in a paper bid. And so what I would find is that I would have some suppliers that the paper bid allowed them to participate, and I had some that only found that this was an open solicitation because it went online through our Edison system. So it did give more competition, and I was able to have the ones that were, for lack of a better term, more tech savvy using the Edison system. And we even did some supplier trainings on how to use that system. They should probably do more. But so I mean, we had both, and I think it's helpful to have both. They're just going to hit two different kind of audiences, so it's just within your supplier market. And also, it depends on the market, doesn't it? Like I found with IT suppliers, it was easier for them to go online, or they were better at it, at doing that process. But with small, like pest control companies, I got a lot of paper bids. So it depends on what are you looking for? What are the services and commodities? But I kind of have a follow-up question with that. For the bid proposals that you receive, how do y'all consider a supplier submitting a proposal that is a cooperative contract? Do you see that? Do you see suppliers submit something that they say, well, we're going to submit this pricing that's on this cooperative contract that we won? How do y'all receive that?
We had this experience with a supplier that submitted pricing off of a cooperative contract. He did not make us aware of that, and then when it came time to actually have a call-in for the services, they were a no-show to the site that they were supposed to be at. So when I started to investigate, I discovered that there were other documents that weren't signed. The salesman wasn't, and it's no one in this room, thankfully. The salesman wasn't responsive. He avoided my phone calls. I had to run down customer service. And then finally, when we did get some response from him, it was, well, you've got to sign these papers. It's one sheet. It's simple. I'm going to send it to you. Well, when I got it, it was an Excel spreadsheet with about 7 pages of terms and conditions that we can't agree to, including indemnity clauses, which none of us can agree to. And so he said, well, other people signed it. I said, first of all, we're not other people. Second, if they're local governments or, city, county, what have you, they're not legally allowed to sign. And, it seemed like it was news to him. So I've not had a good experience with a bidder submitting pricing off of a cooperative contract. It was a difficult situation. So we had to rebid, essentially, is what we did.
Jordan, I may have misunderstood your question, but my answer to your question would be that we would consider using a cooperative first instead of going through our own process. And then if we decided that a cooperative wasn't going to meet our needs, and decided to conduct our own process, at that point, it wouldn't matter to me that bid came through a cooperative. It would be treated just the same as any other bid or proposal. It wouldn't have any elevated status by virtue of being related to a cooperative. Is that answering your question?
Yeah, it does.
Okay. Does that agree? Do you agree with what I just said, or do you have a different take on that?
I do.
A little different take?
I do.
Debbie?
Sorry.
Question in the back?
Well, I can give you a little bit different take. Hello, everyone. I'm actually from Virginia. Drove a nice little 6 hours to see you guys tomorrow, actually. I have had responses come in using cooperatives, and like the gentleman said, I've already considered a cooperative, so obviously there was something in that wasn't in that cooperative that we needed, that wasn't being met, so that's why we went out to bid. And I know some of the cooperatives require that the pricing they offer is the lowest price that they offer anyone, but they're competing against other suppliers who are not on cooperatives who can offer me better pricing. So at one point, at some point, you're at a disadvantage because you're coming off the cooperative. The other thing is the cooperative can possibly lock you into specific products, and maybe those aren't the ones we need. So yes, there are advantages to using national cooperatives. I mean, I used to be a huge US Communities, participant. I came from Fairfax County government, so I led a couple of those procurements. I get it, and I work in a much smaller jurisdiction now. But sometimes the cooperatives just don't work. They don't work for our needs, and that's why when they offer me the cooperative pricing or the cooperative products that are coming off, I'm not going to choose the cooperative over the company that is meeting the specific requirements that we're looking for.
So is that most of y'all's process, is to look and see if it's on the cooperative first before you go forward into your bid process?
And when we're bidding, we can accept bids and then take your cooperative and compare it in with our bids. And we've talked to the auditors about this. So I can do a solicitation, get my responses, bid together your option or any other cooperative option and compare it to one of those. And if your cooperative is the best buy, we can do that. We can buy off your cooperative without going to the bid market, but we can include it as an option to our responses based on her terms and conditions. With the vehicles, if we're bidding vehicles, you can't hardly get the people who have the state bid to respond. They say, well, we have the state, we can't respond to you individually, but we can take what they have to offer and use it as an option when we begin to make our selection for an award.
Is that a difficult conversation to have with the bidders? If you decide to use a cooperative and the bidders have gone to the trouble of responding to the bid, but you decide not to use any of the bids?
We just tell them, we just thank them for bidding and let them know that another option was selected. So it's never really, if they get mad and go home, that's their problem, I guess.
So two things. One, to answer your question about do we go with cooperative first? We at the city of Knoxville don't. Not because we don't like you all and not because we don't want to do it an easier way, but we do have staff to handle our procurements, and we have, as Pamela will expound on all the time, we have DBE goals that we are very intent in trying to meet. So we don't by default go to a cooperative.
Oh, no, yeah. I was talking about, what is your process to review? Like, when do you consider the cooperative in your process?
So we would, so for instance, I have recently bought some fire trucks on cooperatives, as a matter of fact. One of the things up front we will look at is this something that there would be small businesses that we could buy from? So with fire trucks, we know there's so many manufacturers and none of them are DBEs. So we will go ahead and do that on a cooperative. Back to what Susan said about taking in bids and then comparing them to a cooperative, we don't do that. That's not our policy. If we put out a bid, we're gonna go by the bid. We won't. We've had, where's Linda? Is here over there somewhere. Linda's had the instance where we have put out a bid and the department then afterwards said, oh, well, we really liked the cooperative pricing better. We're like, too bad. We've gone out now, so we wouldn't do that necessarily.
I know one thing that when we were at the state meeting last year during the summer, I think it was, they were teaching us how to use their state contracts. And some of the companies that they had several companies that were on state contract for the same product. And what they suggested to do is that if you want to use the state contract, but you have more than one vendor there, that you could go ahead and reach out to those companies and say, look, we're looking at you to use for the state contract, but we know that there are other companies out there, so give us your best and final offer to both of the 2 or 3 of the companies that are in that product area to see if you could get their pricing down even more than what the state contract offered. I thought that was interesting that they did that, but they suggested, go ahead and reach out to them. It wouldn't hurt, so.
Well, I'm going to observe that the time is up, so I think we better declare victory and say thank you. Join me in saying thank you.